Guys, welcome back. It's a bit of a gloomy day out here, but I'm here in Huntsville, Ontario, which is more or less a few hours north of Toronto, where I'm at Huntsville Forest Products, and the man on my right is going to take us on a tour into a commercial sawmill operation. I think it's going to be a nice treat for us. You guys can see what I do with a small sawmill. Now these guys are the pros, and they're going to show us what they can do with the big sawmills. And as you can see behind us, they sort of got me beat in terms of lumber quantity. So without further ado, here's Malcolm on my right. Malcolm's going to be our guide for the day, and he is certainly the knowledgeable one here. So Malcolm, if you wouldn't mind showing us around, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, it'd be a pleasure. Yeah, a bit of background to start off is that, as you said, this is Huntsville Forest Products. It's a division of Halliburton Forest and Wildlife Reserve. It's one of the 4 hardwood sawmills that we own and operate in central Ontario. This is the largest one, and it's the second most recent one to join our group. So we acquired this facility in October of 2020. It'll be 2 years ago exactly on Wednesday next week. And since then we've acquired one additional mill, but this one's still relatively new to the group. We on average cut between 35 and 40,000 board feet per shift at this mill. There's about 45 people working here, and our focus is entirely on hardwood lumber, heavy to hard maple. But why don't we just get started and walk through the lumber yard, and then we'll head in the mill, and then we'll go into the log yard.
Sounds good. Awesome. Here we go.
So these here are the residue bins that capture the sawdust and the chips that are coming out of the mill. It's not the prettiest part of the mill by any means. We've got to do some repairs to the doors to stop stuff spilling on the ground. But basically what's happening is the chips and sawdust are coming out of the mill and going into those bins, and then a trailer is being parked under the bins, or a truck with the trailers backing under it, and then they open up and they dump all the material into those bins. So it saves a little bit of handling time, but as I said, it tends to be a little bit messy at certain times of year.
And you guys have a market for all of this?
Yeah, so all of our residues have a market. Our bark gets used for either fuel, as like hog fuel, or it gets used for landscaping.
Okay.
The sawdust gets used as a biomaterial, a raw material for a bioproduct, or it gets used in MDF panel board just down the road at Panel-Am.
Yeah.
And our chips are used in biorefineries to make everything from food additives to specialty papers to cellulose to acetate and a million other products. So there's a market for every log that rolls into this yard. Every piece of that log has a market and a use, and so we say that there's really no waste in a facility like this. And then sometimes we'll joke that the only waste is the noise.
Yeah.
And, if we could capture that and sell it, we would.
Yeah, sure.
We don't have a market for it yet.
No, that's great. It's great to hear you guys have absolutely no waste. I guess that's how you can maximize whatever you bring in terms of materials. You're maximizing its use and profitability as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, you need it for, this is a very important part of the value stream, and even the stuff that's fallen on the ground, it's still going to get recovered. It's going to get pushed against those concrete blocks at the back, and it'll still end up on a truck going somewhere. Oh, it may not be the highest value use, but you gotta make a market for everything.
This is great to see on a big scale. You guys know at home at my place, I try to have as little waste as possible. If I do have waste, it doesn't mean a heck of a lot to me, but for these guys, if they have waste, you know, that's a big deal.
That's the chipper.
Okay. Flipping the boards. Is there a certain side you want up?
They don't technically need to flip every board, but they may be flipping it to look for defects.
I see.
If it needs to be trimmed off. As you can see, like he's pulling it out a little bit to trim off all that extra weight and to get it to that standard length.
And trim saw, is that down on the right?
Yeah, there's a saw just past it.
Okay, I see. And what do the lasers do here?
That's just showing them the length.
Oh, I see. I
kind of judge how much you can trim, or if you can feed a little and maybe leave a little extra on.
And you have industry sizes you're trying to meet different. Yeah, that's
Yeah, that's the saw head.
Okay.
You can see that her deck is not very full. That's because, as I said, when we were walking in, we're cutting birch right now. It tends to be a smaller piece size.
Right.
And so we don't tend to keep the resize busy. There's more going through the gang.
I got you.
What the operator at the resaw is trying to do is to cut the most value from each log by turning the log. Here we go, that's running. So that, there's a chain turner there. You'll see her turn that log or maybe the next one.
Yep.
Trying to cut, basically trying to cut the whitest face.
Right.
So what you'll see is you cut a board off, that chain's going to come over, stops at the hook, progresses, stops at the hook, and then it's going to go back around.
As many times as it's necessary.
Many times as it takes, until there's only 1 cent of can left, and then that'll go to the gang. Or it'll be a railway tie fence.
Now, I see the saw down here, and I see some pieces coming this way.
Yep.
This goes over to the sorting.
Yeah, so let me explain. So one, he just got a brand new log on,
Yep.
cutting off the slab. Now that can is determined, he's scanned. The scanner is developing a geometric model. Now he's taking another slab. That slab is going down to the basement of the picker. Now the operator's deciding what to do. Are they going to square it up and send it to the resaw, or are they just going to flatten it on 2 sides and send it to the gang? It looks like he's squaring it up and send it to the resaw. So now he's going to dump it,
And over
and
here.
it's going to pop over to the
I
resaw.
see.
This next log, I bet he'll send that to the gang. It's a smaller log. So he's going to take the open face, flip it, get it scanned.
So the scanning you're talking about, that's some sort of computerized way of maximizing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can see the lasers hitting the log.
Yeah.
Those lasers are making a model of that log and figuring out the optimal open space in order to maximize grade recovery, but also to get the most volume of lumber.
And I see it's a double-sided blade.
That's correct.
Cutting in both directions.
Yeah, that's right. So I was wrong. He's actually going to send that to the resaw.
Okay.
I thought he would send it to the gang. This next one will probably go to the resaw too.
Just based on its size.
Yeah, yeah, it's bigger, it looks like it's down. So he's got his open face, he'll turn it, open his face, etc. Something must be wrong with the resaw because it's not running.
But there's a lot of decision making, whether it goes one way or the other at that stage.
Yep. Yeah, both of these operators make a lot of decisions that affect value. The same is also true of the edger, the trimmer, and the grader. All of them have a big effect on what kind of value is being created at the mill. Okay, so we're out in the log yard. Why don't I just explain the whole thing? So
Sure.
Every deck of the log yard has a number, and that way we're able to make sure we're cycling our inventory and keeping things fresh, and also sorting the logs by species, sometimes sorting them by quality as well, but typically just by species. So what we've got in front of us is a couple of decks of maple, hard maple, which is fresh-ish, and it'll probably be going in the mill as soon as we're back on maple. We've been doing a lot of work in the yard to try to get it re-graveled and resurfaced, so that's why there's some material over there. And then we've got 2 of these material handlers moving logs around. On the left, this individual is probably, I'm not exactly sure, but probably been picking up a load that was delivered today that needed to be scaled, or it needed to be checked, or something else, and he's now going to go put it in the appropriate deck, whatever number that may be. The other material handler there looks like he's handling oversized or over length material that had to get trimmed. So a bunch of logs that were too long for the mill got laid out, ends got cut off of them, and now he's getting them ready for them to go back into the appropriate pile and end up at the mill. Depending on the time of year, the yard here can be very full or pretty empty. We're at the time of year that I'd call kind of medium. It's not really that full, but it's not too empty either. And it will also affect how much these 2 machines are working. The busiest time of year is late winter, when both these machines are just going full tilt, because we got tons of trucks coming in. The yard is full of wood, and we want it to be full of wood at that time because it's right before the winter ends and we stop logging for a couple of months. But at this time of year, summer's kind of over, we're getting closer towards winter, so we've got about medium inventory, and both machines are being kept busy, keeping the yard nice and organized.
And just on that, Malcolm, just for our viewers here who don't maybe understand the whole logging seasons, a lot of logging happens in the winter, right? Around our area, everything
Yeah.
freezes up. For those of you who don't know the sort of geography of this area, there's like a few things around. There's hills, but there's tons of water. And if you can imagine logging with heavy equipment and water, those two things don't really mix. So when things freeze up in the winter, as you were saying, logging really kicks off, and that's when you guys are...
That's exactly right. So about 60 to 70% of the logging that supplies this facility, but other facilities like it per year, would happen between December and the end of March.
Okay.
So in that 4-month period, you're getting 60 to 70% of the logging done. And then during the summer, basically the logging operations pretty much shut down for April and May. Then they try and get started up in June, and then they're in full tilt July, August, first part of September. And then when you get to fall, things start to slow down from a logging perspective because it starts to get wet again, and also because hunting season gets in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
just as we're making our way around the yard here, I had a question for Malcolm about log sourcing. I know for myself, my logs come from my property, but obviously that's not the case. Well, maybe it's not. Where do your logs come from here, Malcolm?
yeah, so at this mill it'd be heavy to Crown land. A good chunk of it would come out of Algonquin Park as well. There would be some private wood in here that comes from woodlot owners. Very little of the timber in this yard would have come off of properties that we own and manage. So it would be probably in that pecking order, like the local Crown Forest, which is managed by Westwind Forest Stewardship, then Algonquin Park, and then other people's private land who've decided to do some forest management.
All right, and just for those of you at home who aren't quite sure where this is located, this is pretty much west of Algonquin Park. Algonquin Provincial Park is a massive park. I think it's like 7,700 square kilometers. I'll have to do the conversion for you Americans out there. Yeah, huge area to gather from, and obviously gathering from a huge area like that allows you to get a good number of logs on site. And so this is just another start of a pile, right? So this,
Yep, so
just like the ones on our right.
Exactly, he's starting a new deck because you want to keep your inventory cycling, especially outside of winter. This time of year it's starting to get cooler, so it doesn't really matter, but during the spring, the summer, and then the early fall, you want to cycle your inventory pretty often so that it doesn't stain. And so we establish decks and try and feed the decks into the mill in the appropriate order so that they're staying fresh. Once you get into winter itself, it doesn't really matter because the logs are frozen, but at this time of year we're still playing it cautious and continuing to cycle the inventory.
What type of timeline do you have? Like, do you have a time where the logs should only sit there for a certain period before they're processed?
Yeah, so during the peak of summer, so say like mid-June to mid-September, you don't really want the logs sitting around for more than 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
If you can help it. You want to move them pretty quick. Now, I should qualify that that's for call it the whitewood species like hard maple or yellow birch. For something like red oak or black cherry, it can sit around quite a bit longer, but you still want to cycle them as regularly as you can in order to keep them fresh.
For softwoods, which I normally mill, if I let it sit around in the warm months, like a log, anywhere for that matter, I'll start to get insects boring into it. Is there the same types of problems with hardwood that you found?
Not really. The bigger concern would be stain.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
staining.
you end up with a bluish kind of stain in the lumber if you let the logs sit around too long in the summer. Some log yards in some parts of the world will have they'll spray their logs. They'll have big waterworks that are going and keeping the logs wet and therefore cool during the summer. We don't do that here, but that is the thing. You'll see that more often in the deep south.
Okay.
But no, we don't worry too much about the insects. It's more about the stain.
This sizing here, I'm noticing they're all consistent. Is that like a 12-foot length or a 10-foot length?
Yeah, that looks like a 9/6 length, which is or a 10/6 length maybe, which is what we would like from the logging crews if we're prioritizing railway ties. It helps ensure that the log can make a tie. But really, we will accept logs random length between 8'6" and 12'6".
So you're really relying on a real knowledgeable logging crew to make sure whoever's harvesting it knows what the finished product is.
The loggers that supply this facility and all the other mills around us, those loggers are very talented professionals.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is not a redneck lumberjack.
Yeah, I bet.
Kind of thing. Those are skilled operators that have to have a pretty good grasp of mechanics, finance, environmental issues, markets, specs, geometry, all those things. Like the loggers are a super important group to this supply chain and a pretty talented group of people. Yeah, we're looking at some lumber. This particular pack is Select and Better yellow birch. This would be the highest grade of lumber that we produce. but we produce a bunch of different grades of lumber, sort them many different ways. It's probably safe to say that about half of our lumber production is industrial products like railway ties, pallet, and related things, and then the other half is appearance grade lumber. The industrial lumber tends to be used for, as I said, railway ties, pallets, shoring timbers, dunnage, blocking, stuff like that. Whereas the appearance grade lumber gets used in everything from residential flooring, cabinetry, furniture, and related applications. One thing that's really important to know about hardwood lumber that's different from softwood lumber is that virtually none of the boards in this pack are going to get used as a full board, right? So the hardwood lumber grading system is based on clear cuttings, and that's because most of this lumber, once it gets kiln dried and sent to an end user, it's going to get sliced and diced into components. You know, so if you think about, say, the flooring that's inside your house or the cabinets, if they're made out of hardwood lumber, none of them are using a full-length board, full-size board. They're using a strip like that, and that's what ends up happening to much of this wood, is cutting it into the components that are needed to make those finished products.
Just a question, this right here obviously is green. I can feel it, although it just rained. You guys always sell your wood green, and then the next person will dry it to whatever spec they're needing.
Yeah, at this point, we sell everything at our mills rough and green. At some point in the future, I expect that we'll have kilns, but that could be 5 years from now, it could be longer from now. But it's we view it as an eventuality given the scale that we've built up. But for today, we are a rough green hardwood lumber company.
Okay.
Okay, so this is one of our really important products. These are railway ties, 7 by 9 inch cross ties. And they're sitting in a bundle here because they're going to get inspected, and then they're going to be packaged up, ready for shipment to a pressure treating facility, who will treat the ties, stamp them, do some other stuff to them, and then ship them out to the railways. Railway ties are an important product group, especially for the kind of timber we have, which tends to be larger wood, sometimes big-hearted, sometimes not. Color and appearance is often not too important to the railway as long as the tie is sound. And so these ones have to be sound, and so there's a few in here that I wouldn't be surprised if once they get inspected get bumped out, but the majority of them look like good sound railway ties that'll be in the ground for 20 years or more.
And in terms of the length that's coming off your mill here, it's a rough length, and then it'll get sawn at the pressure treating facility.
No, we'll probably cut it to the.
Oh, you will. Okay.
Here. Yeah, and ship it at the finished length. But coming out of the mill, sometimes we're doing it cut to length, and sometimes we're doing it as the random length coming out, and then trimming it out in the yard.
Would this be the bigger product for you guys compared with the lumber packs we just saw, or is it a bit of a depending on the customer?
It would depend on the logs first and foremost.
Oh, okay.
And then to an extent it depends on the markets. Right now we're cutting a fair amount of ties, so it would be pretty significant product that we're cutting. But at different times it could be less. And
species, it doesn't matter per se, or do you have a preferred species you make railroad ties out of, or ties out of?
Broadly speaking, it's dense hardwoods.
Okay.
Okay, so you wouldn't make a railway tie out of poplar.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But any of the other, cherry, oak, maple, birch, etc., that would be beech. That would be fine. And from our perspective, where we prioritize ties, it depends on what the other cutting lists are, what the other markets are, and all of that. But the vast majority of the ties in this pile are hard maple. I see some other species too, but these are mostly hard maple, and that would be pretty typical for us because most of what we cut is hard maple.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for our tour today of the Huntsville Forest Products. Big thank you to our expert there, Malcolm. Malcolm showed us around all the aspects of this industry, and he certainly is a wealth of information, and I took an awful lot away from our visit today. If you guys have any questions, maybe you wanted to investigate the Huntsville Forest Products a little bit more, be sure to check out the website and all the contact information down in the description of this video. And as always, guys, get out there, do some sawing if you can, be well, and I'll see all you guys next time.